Show of hands, you could do the little hand raise thing. How many people have a startup that are here? Have a startup or are entrepreneurs? Great. We've got lots of people raising their hand. Terrific. How many more people would love to start a startup? All right, so we've got a bunch more hands going there. So basically, this is for all of you. And my name is Donna Griffit, aka Donna GPT. And I have been a corporate storyteller and a pitch alchemist for nearly 20 years now. Brian, you're drawing on my lovely slide. So if we could not do that, that would be wonderful. And actually, Brian Torres, could you just get rid of those scribbles because they'll show up on all the slides now. So basically what a pitch alchemist means, if you think of alchemy, it's taking something that's already there as an element and transforming it into something much more valuable. And that's exactly what the power of storytelling can do for you. And I last year published my first book called Sticking to My Story, The Alchemy of Storytelling, which is actually putting that into practice. And it's really the Bible for how to put together a powerful deck. Now, I know that a lot of you out there are hardware entrepreneurs, which makes it even more challenging to tell your story. And I want to kind of infuse into your hardware the soft skill of storytelling so that when it comes time to speaking to investors, you know how to capture not just their minds, but their hearts and their guts. It's like 3 levels of communication. Your story today just matters more than ever. It's not even a question anymore. It's not enough to just show stats and technology, even though you have to have it today to be able to stand out. You need something that's memorable and something that they get. We're going to be reviewing and deep diving into your deck. And hopefully, again, we'll have time for a lightning round of some elevator pitches and some online Donna GPT coaching. But for now, I want to dive into the structure and the content of it. So what are we looking at here on the screen? Not this one. Legos, right? A lot of engineers in the room, usually engineers that are in the room with me will say, that's not Legos, those are Duplos. Don't you know the difference? Yes, I know, because engineers always look for the flaws in what people said. So how many of you played with Legos as a child? How many of you have kids or grandkids that play with their Legos? Great. How many of you have ever stepped on a Lego in the middle of the night and wanted to commit mass murder of the Danish nation for inventing this horrible thing? Yes, John is like, yeah, that's me. So in an era of PlayStations and tablets and all kinds of electronic doodads that kids have to play with, what do you think the explanation that Lego is still one of the best-selling toys is? You can put it in the chat. What's the magic behind Lego? Why are Legos so wow? Why are they still so important? So pop in the chat. What do you think? Anyone? Yes, freedom. So Julian says they're freedom, yes, to create. Miguel says you can make anything with them and you can bring your dreams to life. I know Voler probably can do electrified Legos for you. You could be creative. Absolutely. So, and a bunch of creativity up there, personalized. So Legos are really the creative expression where structure meets flexibility. Sounds like a little bit of an oxymoron, but think about it for a second. You can build whatever you want out of Legos. You can build entire towns if you want to build them out of Legos, but you have to stick to the structure. It's very modular. You can't start bending and trying to twist it around. That's not going to work. It'll all collapse. The same thing goes for your message. I want to give you today your Lego structure, your framework that will hold your content in place. Now, I'm sitting in a room in a house right now. I don't see the framework, but I kind of know it's there because if not, I'd be sitting in rubble. But I see walls and windows and bookshelves. The same will go for the structure I'm going to give you today. It will become transparent for you, but what we'll see is the creativity and the genius of your product, and that's what we want. So the first order of business that we're going to do when we sit down to start creating our investor deck is to chunk our information into 4 sections. And then that becomes sort of our agenda. Now, why chunking? When we went to school as kids, or if anybody has young children, kindergarten, first grade, and they start to learn, you start to see this explosion of learning because they're capable of taking in so much information at the same time. As we move on in our years and our brains become, shall we say, riper or more mature, it's a little bit harder to take in new information. So what we do is when somebody's trying to teach us something, either if it's not quite getting through to us, we'll either start arguing with them or we'll just tune out and go to our phones because, who wants to listen to that? So in order to help adults learn, the principle of chunking was created back in the 50s, and this is the formula for it. 5 + 2 - 2. So that's about the kind of amounts of information you want to give the adult brain at the same time. 3 to 7 chunks. 4 is being the ideal kind of magic number. Any more than that, over 7, we're going to feel overwhelmed. Any less than that, we're going to feel cheated. Let me give you an example of what I mean by chunking. If I were to have started this talk off and said, hi, everybody, today we're going to be talking about fresh fruit. We'll talk about apples, peaches, plums, pears, watermelon, grapes, raspberries, blueberries, and bananas. What do you remember from that list? Bananas, right? Or something, maybe your favorite fruit off of there, but you're not going to remember the entire list, nor would I expect you to. Because our brains can't take in just random lists. But if I were to have said, hi, everyone, today we're going to be talking about fresh fruit. We'll start with citrus fruit, including oranges, lemons, and grapefruit, moving on to forest fruit, including strawberries, blackberries, and blueberries, and finally, for dessert, some tropical fruit, coconut, mango, and guava. A little bit easier to remember there. I bet all of you could tell me the 3 categories, right? That's what our brain does all day. It categorizes and organizes information. So something new comes in. Oh, I know where that goes. Flip, file away. Oh, information, I know that goes. Houston, we have a problem. Incoming piece of unidentified information. System will be shutting down in T - 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Boom. We're gone. We don't know what to do with it. And we don't have the time to bother. So what I want you to do is I want you to chunk your data in a way that their brains, investors' brains or anyone's brains, are used to getting it. And this goes for your customers as well. If we talk about a sales deck, it's a very similar structure. And here are the chunks, or as the theater baby, called them in my book, the acts, the 4 acts of your investor deck. And here you go. Bum, ba, da, bum. Now, I'm sure there are some voices out there in your brains going, problem, solution, really? That's like the best she has to tell us about Silicon Valley pitching. I learned that in business school a bazillion years ago. You're right. It's not new. In fact, it's ancient. It's probably about 36,000 years old. And speaking of hardware, 36,000 years ago was about the same time that we started getting, we got our last hardware upgrade. And since then, we've had a lot of software upgrades, but our prefrontal cortex was born. And that was the same time period that people started seeing cave paintings, which was the first recorded storytelling. And as it evolved over the years through Greek classics and Shakespeare, Moliere, and Chekhov, it was in acts. And there's a very intentional structure to this. And that's how we learned in our brains to communicate. So there's something magical about the way this works. And we wanted to kind of be, now you might think, yeah, but I do it this way. You're in good shape. I get decks all the time that are sort of scattered everywhere. And it doesn't do you any favors. And I want to dive into this structure, into the main slides from each one to kind of give you some insight on it. Let me check the chat and see if there's any other, okay, any questions, please keep them coming on the chat. Before we even start, I want you to understand that investors are listening to you through filters. And 3 of the main things their ears are listening for the entire time is credibility, likability, and momentum. Credibility being how well do you know your stuff, your experience, your team's experience, proven track records, exits from past companies. Momentum, how far along are you in terms of sales, in terms of product, in terms of engagement, in terms of anything that you have to show about your growth. And likability. Likability isn't like, oh my gosh, I'm so nice and I'm so sweet, you should really like me. This is not that. Likability is about flexible mindset. Investors want to know that you are there to take more than just their money. They want to see that you are open to hearing feedback, critiques, help that they have from their own past experience. One tip, this is going to blow your mind, especially since we're all technical people here. One tip I've heard time and time again from investors is when you're sitting across from us in a meeting, have an actual notebook and a pen. I'm not saying computer notebook, not phone, not somebody taking notes, and actually be taking notes, because what that signals to them is that you're actually listening to them. You could throw the piece of paper away later, but it's showing that flexible mindset. Now, I've sat down with a lot of investors who have said we get so many amazing pitch decks that it's not a question of who to say yes to, it's a question of who to say no to. And they look for little things. One investor said if somebody looks at their phone in the middle of a meeting, that's it for me. Sounds extreme. At the same time, we're up against a lot of amazing companies and we don't want any of these things. So always be striving. Show your credibility or show your momentum, and always show your flexible mindset. They're going to be working with you for a very long time. It might last longer than a marriage. They want to know it's going to be a good one. Now, you know how you walk into a theater and there's like the orchestra playing the music before the show even starts. That's the overture. And I want to go into what the overture of your presentation is. If you have significant traction, you've won awards, you've closed around, you've closed a big contract, don't wait to say that. We want to say it up front. I'll show you how in just a minute. But unless your team looks like this, there is nothing that says you must put your team up front. If your team adds credibility to you, these are people with decades of experience, with past exits, with serious know-how, big people on your advisory board, by all means, put it up front. If you're just, a bunch of nice first-time entrepreneurs, nothing, you can also put it later, because those first few minutes are really going to dictate if they listen to the rest of it or not. I don't mean don't introduce yourself, be polite, introduce who you are and who's sitting with you in the room. This is an investor said this to me. They're looking for exceptional strengths in a company, and your traction shows how exceptional you are. Put it at the top. So I call it the brag slide. Now, please don't call it the brag slide. That'll just be our code word for it, because that might not come across very well. But if you have big numbers, growth, month over month, quarter over quarter, engagement, major partnerships, IP or regulatory progress that you've made, amazing testimonials, partnerships with leading vendors or leading companies that are not just, okay, we got an AWS credit for $100,000. I mean, come on, everybody can kind of do that. You want to put that up front, big, chunky numbers that grab their attention and make them listen. If you have this good news and you're waiting till slide 17, there's a good chance you might have lost them by now. Make them perk up and listen. So that's part of your overture. If you have it, if you're not there yet, it's okay to not put a brag slide. There'll be elsewhere to put that. The other thing I want you to have in your overture is your vision statement. How many of you have a vision statement? Hand on your heart. Not many. Now, of those few that raised their hand, how many of you have a vision statement that you're happy with? Hands go down. Okay, I really want you to contemplate this. Simon Sinek says that people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And I want you to understand what your why is. It's what keeps you up at night. It's what wakes you up in the morning. It's what's going to happen 5 years from now when you're being acquired or IPOing or have some significant event in your company's life. And they're going to be writing about you in TechCrunch. They're going to call you the company that did what for the industry. Now, this is not necessarily what you're doing now. This is what you're striving for. This is your North Star. This is your guiding light. This is where it's taking you. And Silicon Valley investors really appreciate the visionary piece, even if you haven't quite yet achieved that part. They know that you're looking at the bigger game. Now, Simon Sinek talks about 3 layers of messaging: the why, the how, and the what. I'm going to flip the order on this slightly. We're going to start with the why and end with the why too. We'll come back to that. Then the what is it that you're doing? And then how are you doing it? And then afterwards, it's going to be the business side behind it. So let's go into that. Fact 1, the problem, the opportunity. There are 2 ways to do this. You can either make them feel the pain, the stick of something horrible that has either happened or could happen to them, or hallelujah, the carrot. Oh my God, I didn't know I wanted this. This is amazing. Where have you been all my life? Now, either one are legit, carrot or the stick. You can go for either, and you just want to go for what's more persuasive to your audience. But to me, the most important part is I want you to turn it into a story. It can be your origin story, which is definitely a strong preference of mine. If you have an interesting reason why you started, you may not think it's interesting, but there's a way to cook it up and make it interesting. I'm going to tell you a few origin stories about clients I've worked with later. It could be the story of a company you used to work for, of a company in the world, of something that happened, of numbers, of quotes, of trends, something that people go, ah, I hear that, I feel that. And you want to start it off in a way that people are nodding in agreement and resonating with you. Now, Mark Twain said, never let the truth get in the way of a good story. So let me put a very important disclaimer here. I would never tell you to lie. Storytelling is not lying. Storytelling is taking the truth and presenting it in the most attractive way possible. Now, don't fudge your numbers. Don't put vanity metrics. Don't be, Elizabeth Holmes and a few of those others that we have. The vision never actually came to fruition. We want to be careful with that. But our origin stories can be a little bit more flamboyant. Now, kids love stories. These are my 2 girls when they were 2. They're now turning 11 and turning 8. But at that same age of 2, they became obsessed with books. This should have been like a foreshadowing for me because they never are without a book in their hand. And they would grab these stacks of books and read. Because that's the age where we are really forming language and communication in their little neural pathways. We're starting to see, how do we interact with the world? And stories do that. Kids want to hear the same stories again and again and again. And for us, it's boring. For them, it's vital to how they develop. Stories and metaphors connect between people and they resonate. It's one of the only universal things that all religions and all ethnicities and all racial groups have in common. We all tell stories. We sit at holidays, and you probably heard your grandparents or your aunt and uncle or your parents' stories so many times. It's like you almost feel that you were there experiencing the story. And that is so powerful. Because you know how sometimes you'll say oh my gosh, we were so on the same wavelength. That was such a great meeting. That's not lip service. Actually, they have done studies where they've measured brainwaves of somebody telling a story and somebody listening to a story, and they found that the brainwaves will sync up. And think about that. If you're so in sync with someone, whether it's an investor or a potential partner or a potential client, that they are that enraptured with you, what an amazing moment of influence you have there. And that's where you really want to take advantage of that. And that's what you want to foster and create, that moment of sync up, that moment of agreement. And I've been in rooms where good pitches and good stories were given where you could hear a pin drop. Not an eye is on a phone. Everyone is completely with them. And that's what we want to create. I see something in the chat. Amir says problem or unmet need. Absolutely. Problem, unmet need, opportunity, something new, something old, something borrowed, something blue. Old, new, borrowed. So I want to give you guys a few stories of some startups that I've worked with. These are also in my book. So this is what I call the souvlaki story. It's the story of Eat With. Anybody ever heard of Eat With? They kind of are an Airbnb for your kitchen. If you've ever traveled and wanted to experience what it is to eat with a local, Eat With will let you do that. They were acquired in 2017, and I met them back in 2010. So this is a story that really stuck with me for a long time. And they gave me a pitch, and I said, that's really nice, but I'm curious, where did you come up with this idea? That's usually the first question I'll ask people. And one of the founders lit up and he said, it was on our honeymoon. We were honeymooning in the Greek islands, and we were looking for an authentic local food experience, and all we saw for miles around were those tacky signs that said souvlaki, souvlaki, souvlaki. Probably everyone who's traveled has seen those touristy signs, and that's not where you want to eat. And he's like, that's not what we signed up for. And suddenly we saw a woman coming home from a marketplace with these baskets laden with food and meat and fresh produce. And I stopped her and I said, excuse me, ma'am, can you tell me where the locals eat? And she looked at me kind of funny and she said, well, what do you mean, where do we eat? We eat at home. And he said, well, how do I get a reservation for that restaurant? And she said, you mean you want to come for dinner? And I said, oh, no. They were a little embarrassed. She's like, well, you know what? You should come for dinner tomorrow. I'm having some people over. You're more than welcome to come. And they sheepishly took the little note with the address, and she walked off, and they were too intrigued to give it up. So the next night they showed up to a table filled with salads and meat and fish and ouzo. And he said there were people there that were locals and expats, and it was fascinating. He said, this to me was how travel should be. And the kernel of Eat With was born. Now, here comes the little Mark Twain twist. Last year, when my book came out, I was contacted by a journalist from a big business publication, and she said that she read my book and she'd love to do a story on it. She said, but I do have a question. I said, sure. She said, I did some research, and Eat With told a different story when they first came out. They said it was a friend of a friend of a friend who invited them for dinner. I was a bit flabbergasted. I'm like, listen, I've been telling this story for 13 years. Did I get it wrong? Did I tell them to tell it that way? What happened? And I said, you know what? That's the story I know, and I'm sticking to it. She wrote the article. It all came out. It was fine. When the article came out, I got an email from the founder thanking me for the mention and congratulations on the book. He knew he was in the book, of course. And I said, listen, guy, I need to ask you a question. Which is the right version of the story? Now, I'm not going to tell you because it doesn't matter. Doesn't it sound more romantic to think of this chance meeting with this sweet little old lady who invited them to their home? Let's stick with that, because I doubt that their investors went and knocked on the doors of this little Greek village to see who hosted them. And that's what I mean by storytelling. Never let the truth get in the way of a good story, because that's what's going to stick with people. I would say tell the same story from the beginning of your launch. Don't switch it in the middle, because that definitely could look a little bit funny. Here's another story, very different realm. This is from health tech, and it's the healing story, the story of Cure Life. This is Ron, and this is Raphael, his father. Ron is a serial entrepreneur, and when Raphael turned 56, he was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. Anyone here that has ever been diagnosed with it or had a family member knows that it completely turns your life upside down. He went from being a powerful, energetic man to someone who needed a nap 2 hours a day. He couldn't eat the food he loved. He couldn't eat his wife's cooking. And even though he was changing his diet, his blood sugar levels were still going up rather than going down. And Ron watched as his father started to shrivel away, and he said, I'm doing something about this. And he set out on a quest to cure type 2 diabetes. Now, we know that's a chronic disease, so that's a bit of a lofty goal, but that was how adamant he was about it. And he went from India to Indiana, from Sri Lanka to South Africa, gathering different methods. And he was able to put together a capsule with 36 different medicinal herbs from Ayurveda and from some others that brought his father's blood sugar levels down 70% within 3 weeks. Almost pre-diabetic levels. But But along the way, he learned that there was a much bigger problem out there. And this is where I would call this the transition from the problem to the solution. All right. So he's told the story. Now we go in. $1.1 billion spent each year on diabetes research, and still there's no way for people to accurately and easily manage this chronic disease. 166 million Americans will be diagnosed each year with this, and there's still no cure. And other than insulin and maybe some innovation in the insulin pumps, not much beyond that. And it's a gateway disease for cancer and for cardiac disease and for obesity. And he realized that what he really needed to create, in addition to Curelin, which is the capsule, is the CureLife platform that enables people to effectively and safely manage their chronic disease, starting with diabetes, expanding into other chronic illnesses. Now, another fun little Mark Twain moment. Around the time the book came out last year, Ron contacted me and asked if I would work on their sales deck. They've raised 2 rounds. They're doing extremely well. And now they're selling to very big companies. I said, absolutely. And they sent me the deck. And then I met with the director of US sales and the VP sales. And I said, the deck looks pretty, but where's the story? And they said, what story? I said, the Ron and Raphael story. And they said, well, we're talking to executives from Walmart and from Walgreens and from CVS and Whole Foods. We don't have time to tell stories. I said, oh, yes, you do. Because you should be telling this story, because that's what's going to be memorable. If you think they're going to remember the 36 herbs that make this up, or the production process, the operations, how big the bottles are, they're not. They're going to remember this. And then they told me something amazing. Each of them had a father who had been diagnosed with type 2 diabetes in their 50s. I said, are you kidding me? And you were going to not tell this story? Because when we have that strong a connection, and not all of our startups have that strong a connection, we become the superhero company that has devoted its very being to helping the people that we love and those beyond suffering from the same thing. There's always time for a story. And that is what people are going to walk away and remember and relate. People do not remember numbers and facts and figures and technical specs. They remember how they felt. They remember stories. And that's what we are relatable, whether they go back and 2 investors are barbecuing on a Sunday and trading stories about cool companies they've seen. The stories of the company will be what they share. Questions about any of these? And if you're thinking, oh, I don't really have a story, I don't know what I tell, feel free to ask any questions.
This is great stuff, Donna. It's just riveting. Just keep going. I'm loving it.
So if anyone out there is still skeptical, I want you to watch this cute, short little video, and maybe this will compel you that you are more than just a can of beans.
Every day I meet with individuals, I meet with companies, and implicitly what they want to do is they want to better communicate their message, their story. Tell me about it. Tell me about yourself. Tell me about your company. It usually goes like this: beans 51%, tomatoes 34%, water, sugar, modified corn flour, vinegar, salt, condiments. They give me the ingredients. I went to school here, I work there, we're using AI, blockchain. They give me the ingredients. Now, that doesn't often tell me the significance of the person, the company, what they're doing. This can of beans right here is a time machine. For me, it's a time machine. Tonight, I live in Singapore. Tonight on the 13th floor, on our balcony, I'm going to go outside with my little camping stove and a pot, and this can right here of these beans, these baked beans, a bag of hot dogs, and I'm going to mix it up. I'm going to cut up the hot dogs with my pocket knife that I carry around. I'm going to mix them in here in my little pot. I'm going to have some Townes Van Zandt country music playing inside, and I'm going to cook these while I sip a Budweiser. And my wife will be sitting there with me. She'll have a glass of wine. She'll have some water, whatever she's going to have. I'm going to have a Budweiser. And I will tell her about when I used to eat this. When I was a kid at the hunting camp, I would go there. I would eat Beanie Weenie all the time in the Atchafalaya Swamp at the deer camp. And I will get nostalgic about when Ronald Reagan was a president. That's when I was a kid. I didn't know anything about politics, but he looked like and he sounded like a president. As a kid, that was very comforting to me. And I will almost surely talk about that. And this time machine right here will allow me to experience that nostalgia. It will be incredibly pleasurable. It will lead to interesting conversations with my wife. It is definitely not just beans, tomatoes, water, sugar, modified corn flour, whatever that is, vinegar, salt, condiments. You're not just a can of beans. Find the significance. Find your story.
So all of you working on hardware, you are anywhere from lifesavers to life givers to so many things. And I want you to really own that and celebrate that as well. So shall we have a couple of stories for multi-application product? My hope, Armin, is at the end of our session that we'll do a round of lightning elevator pitches. So if you stick around, you can be first if you want to. Keep the questions coming. So let's talk about identifying our villain. This list I made in 2009 when I first started giving workshops like this. And these were the biggest problems that startups were tackling at the time. Look familiar? Bad economy is still around. Security vulnerability is still around. Finding the right information. Oh boy, do we have some different things happening now. Boredom, popularizing cultural trend, and missing a great opportunity, those are the carrots. Those aren't like lifesavers, but heck, you know, you're not going to solve world peace by watching a TikTok video, but it certainly makes a lot of money, and I'm sure the investors are happy about that. Back in March 2020, as the world was shutting down, I had clients that were pivoting on a dime to be able to meet the new challenges that were arising at the time. Things like remote work and remote study, logistics. Remember the days where we couldn't get toilet paper and there wasn't protective gear for our doctors, money saving, digital health. And digital health has received a boost from COVID that would have probably taken about 20 years otherwise. And now here we are at the wake and the era of a new villain, hero, friend, foe, not quite sure yet, right? The race to AGI is on. And one thing we know is we cannot ignore AI. You don't have to make your whole presentation about it, but you do have to have an addressable strategy of how you will deal with AI in the world, how you will compete if you're in that space with the open AIs and Googles of the world, how you'll incorporate it, how you won't be crushed by it, rather you'll leverage it. So there's a new twist on the story. And that completes Act 1 out of 4. And that was our problem or opportunity. Any questions lingering on that? And we'll do some work on the stories towards the end. We'll have a fun interactive little session. But if there's any questions, keep them coming. Okay. Now we get to Act 2. Oh, wait, we do have a question there. Make the story personal. Absolutely. You want it to, if you can, make it as personal as possible. So Act 2 is all about you now, the hero. We had the villain, and now the hero comes in to save the day. And you are going to create probably the simplest sentence you've ever written. Doesn't mean it's the easiest. Your simple solution statement, 1 or 2 sentences. And the formula is this: we do X for Y by Z or Z, wherever you're from in the world. So I want anyone reading it to get it, whether they have a degree in computer science or not, whether they're a hardware engineer or not. Everyone should be able to understand what you do and why it matters. And as fast as possible, you want to go into a powerful demo. Steve Jobs could have stood there for an hour talking about the iPad. The minute he showed it, people just got it. Remember that prefrontal cortex, our last hardware upgrade? That is the part that is responsible for visual processing, among other things. We are visual creatures. We need to see it to believe it. Now, with hardware, if you can show something, do it. If not, what you want to do is take us on a user journey demo. It's not about having some flashy video. Sometimes I see people putting together a bunch of like stock videos and that's their demo. We don't need that. That doesn't inform. It's enough to show us what it is and how it's used. So take an actual story of an actual client of yours or an imagined client, like an ideal client if you don't yet have clients, and walk us through how it's done. If you want to juxtapose that with how it's been done up until now, and what a mess it is. And now suddenly you come in and it's a clean, simple process where you're going to highlight 3 or 4 amazing features that makes their jaws drop. And then don't forget to show the results, even if they are estimated results. How much faster, better, less resources, fewer resources, less spend will you have with your way? And if you have testimonials, put those on. Because when somebody else, it's social proof that you've changed their lives and they're never going back. You can do what I call a deconstructed user story. So you can actually take a use case from one of your customers, split it in half, and start off in Act 1 with their life before working with you, their miserable existence. And then when you come back to the demo, show now how things are so much better and brighter for them. And that's what the demo is supposed to serve. You want them imagining themselves using it or imagining someone that they know that it would be relevant for them to use it. And then we start to move into Act 3, which is the business. I'm not going to go into all of the business plan. I want to touch on a few important things. One, traction. If you didn't do the brag slide at the beginning, because your traction is, steady, but not like, wow, faint on the floor. This is where you talk about it. And we want to talk about product, partnerships, pipeline, IP, growth, engagement, anything again that shows growth and shows momentum. Yogesh says typically VCs don't give much time, hardly a minute demo. There's only so much you can cover in a minute. You can do a phenomenal product demo in a minute, believe it or not. And our goal in creating a story-driven pitch is to buy ourselves time. So if they've only given you 20 minutes or half an hour for your meeting, believe me, if they're interested, they will cancel their next meeting and stay with you. I've seen it happen. I have an entrepreneur sitting in the next room on the phone, and he's my worst and best client, and my husband. And I've seen him, he just closed his pre-seed round, and how investors that are truly interested will drop everything and spend an hour or more. So we want to pique their interest. And how do we do that? By following the framework: heart, gut, mind. And our 4-act play, which actually you may not realize it, but it's made of their questions. We'll get back to that in a little while. I'll show you what I mean by that. So here it's going to be traction. Then there's 3 things I want to highlight from the business. One is differentiation. What truly sets you apart from your competitors? And it's very important that we never diss our competitors. In Silicon Valley in general, you're going to hear a lot of amazing, great, fabulous, terrific, fantastic, we're totally going to do it, like, dude. And then you might never hear from them again. Doesn't mean they're saying no, it just means it's no for right now, and keep the door open. But the minute you show negativity, doesn't sit well with them, because they're thinking, wow, if they're dissing this guy, I wonder what they're saying about me behind my back. So always build on your competitors' strengths. What they're doing is great. They've received funding. That's phenomenal. What we're doing is excellent plus plus. Do not let your competitive slide look like that, please. If they have to work to read it, they're not going to read it. All right. So that's a big no-no. How should you show it then? Here's one way. Now, there will be investors that say to you, oh, I hate it that way. I just hate that. That's awful. But then if you don't have it, they ask, why don't you have the XY? And if you try to like be cute and put yourself down there, they're not going to get it. So this works well if you have 2 key differentiators from your competitors. All right. And obviously you want to put yourself in the top right quadrant, but you also want to be able to say what truly sets us apart is. And you have like 3 or 4 bullets of why you are differentiated. Another one that I really love is the petal diagram. This is Steve Blanks, and he created this in order to showcase startups that are sort of sitting at the crossroads between several different ones. So Slack integrated with a bunch of different solutions. At the end, it also cannibalized some of those. But as we can see, we are positioned as this uniter. as this integrator, as this something that will bring and orchestrate many other things. So when you touch on many, this is a great way of showing it. It doesn't have to be 5, it can be 3, it can be 4, it can be 6, it can be more or less, but that works really well. So that's competition. So differentiation, monetization. How do you make money? How will you make money in the future? You always want to have an element of predictable revenue if you can. Subscriptions, licensing, something that shows the steady inflow of money. But there also might be add-ons. There might be data plays. There might be premium features that will show up down the line that you can show projections that this is going to be even more lucrative. Oftentimes with medical devices, we have the razor blades model, where you will either give them the device or lease it for a very low cost, and the disposables will be your moneymaker. Everyone wants to reach the point where they don't even have to charge for whatever the device is, and they're just making so much money from the syringes and the different disposables. So you want to be able to explain your monetization model. And opportunization. I know that's not a real word, in case you were wondering. I just made it up. Because it rhymes, first of all, with differentiation and monetization, but also it's not just about how big your market is. And yes, we need to be able to show that we have a very big market. It's about why you, why now, creating that level of urgency. Investors suffer from acute FOMOitis, whether they want to admit it or not. This is why things like FTX happen, where no due diligence was done. And I met someone from a diligence team that found at least 36 different loopholes in FTX, and nobody wanted to see the reports. So everybody was seeing things, whoa, well, that button's putting it, I better get in on that. Now, how can we use that for our own benefit? We want to show them the urgency. We want to show them why they need to invest in us now or forever kick themselves. So we want to look for trends that represent this. And there's different kinds of trends you can look for. One could be behavioral, such as digital health getting a huge boost. People are much more comfortable now speaking to doctors, not going to doctors' offices. And how can your device that measures vitals remotely and reports back serve that, for example? It could be legislative. So something that's changing in a regulatory space, a law that's coming down, such as in 2025, there'll have to be a certain accountability for ESG, for different and carbon offsets for factories, and you're there to help them measure that and show how you are offsetting it. The third one is kind of cheeky, but it works nevertheless. It's the heat in the market. Competitors of yours who have gotten big investments, or other, or even indirect competitors, or just in general, how much VC money has been thrown at this. And if you can show how much you've achieved with what little you've raised or nothing compared to competitors of yours who've raised several $1 million, that is a nice signal that, you know, you might be next in line. And I can tell you that it really works. It really works when you have a believer, when you have a lead investor that truly believes in you and is willing to evangelize. It all falls into place. So let's look at a classic case where urgency obviously wasn't there and a lot of investors missed out. Airbnb back in 2008 was attempting to raise $150,000 at a $1.5 million valuation, meaning the investors could have owned 10% of the company back then. So Brian Chesky wrote this in 2015. It's simply titled 7 Rejections. And he brings 7 emails, redacted, of course, of investors that rejected them for reasons like, well, it sounds interesting, but it's not our area of focus. How many times have you heard that? From an investment perspective, potential market opportunity didn't seem large enough. Or we've not been able to get excited about travel-related businesses. So first of all, he has a great message for you. Next time you have an email, an idea, and it gets rejected, I want you to think of these emails, because I'm sure that these investors, every time this comes out in reservices, are kicking themselves. Actually, one of them wrote a response. I'm one of the 7. But what I did not see their full pitch deck back then, but for me, what would I have thought of urgency? What was happening in 2008? What was happening, Miguel?
2008. Oh my. So this was before pandemic. This was
Way before pandemic. This is
way
when the
before.
real
2008, not 18. Yeah, yeah. Was that the crash?
Oh, it was the big crash and
Yeah.
all the money was crashing. People were losing their shirts and everything was kind of collapsing around us. So what happens when we have a big economic crisis? We try to cut spending. And where's another place we cut spending? In travel? Either we don't travel, or if we travel, we try to travel on a budget. So if we could show the urgency of people wanting to travel, but yet in a way that's affordable to them, or even looking at the authenticity factor, because millennials were very much about experiences. It's not luxury, it's experience. So that's a behavioral thing as well. So we want to be able to show how urgent we need you. Turn up that FOMO heat. Questions about any of this, keep them coming, people. Your team, my sincere apologies to all women here. This is just, Silicon Valley oftentimes can look very bro, but we're here to change that. We're not going to let that happen. But this is actually from the series Silicon Valley, where it wasn't all men team. And if you haven't seen that series, it's hilarious and so close to home. I highly recommend it. But what do we want to show with the team? We want to show, you don't need entire bios or entire resumes. You want to show the 2 or 3 top assets that someone brings to the table and logos of places that they worked for, were affiliated with, studied with, and so on. So really show why this is the team to do this. And finally, Act 4. This is the vision for the future. This is where we start tying it all together. So remember that vision statement from the beginning? This is where we want to come full circle up with it and bring it back. Now that they've seen what you're doing, why it matters, why people need it, the business to back it up, the projections of the numbers, now you want to show them how much bigger this can get. Bigger in maybe other marketplaces, bigger in other features, being the first to establish a gold standard of something. Really tie together your big vision. And then, of course, you're asked because you're there to ask for money. Now, I want you to have a very specific ask slide. What you're asking for, the main allocations. You don't have to talk to me about paper clips, but what are you going to be using it for? But even more important than that, your round objective. How long will this carry you through? What will your runway be? And what will your results be at the end? People all often forget this now. Investors are on the hook now if they write you a check for next round. So they want to know logically what you can achieve with their money in terms of KPIs, users, sales, what markets you'll be in. So you want to look forward to that point in time. Where will you be? And then work backwards. And as one Silicon Valley venture partner said to me, I'm going to have to either invest in your next round or bring people to invest. Otherwise, it's not a good signal for others. So I need to know now that what you're planning on doing is doable. So always be thinking of that next round and show them what you can do with their money. So here we are once again, the 4 acts of your play. And again, this is not 4 slides. It holds the slides. It's your structure. It's your container. The key investment merits is a summary slide where you remind them now 15, 20 minutes have gone by. You remind them of the top reasons to invest in you. Amir has a question. Usually during the problem statement, you have to show that this is a big problem business-wise. The problem's here to say, yes, they call it a hair on fire problem moment. So that's where it's either the stick, big problem, worth a lot of money, not being solved completely yet. The problem's growing, the problem's getting worse, the problem's pervasive, it hasn't been fixed yet, or an opportunity so big and with such great potential that they'd be mad to not invest in someone who's dabbling in that. You're absolutely right. So you need to make sure that comes across. Other questions, comments, or concerns about any of these 4? And then I have just a few last slides, and then we're going to turn it over to all of you to do some practice. This is going to be fun. What about if we want to turn it into something shorter? I'm working with groups of startups now that have a summit and they have to give a 3-minute pitch or a 5-minute pitch or 1 minute or a 30-second or what have you. What you don't want to do is slice it because you don't have a lot of time. So like if I were to just, cut off half of this picture to fit the slide, it wouldn't make any sense anymore. And our natural instinct is, well, I don't have a lot of time, so I won't talk about the story. I'll just go straight into the product. And again, you miss that special connection with the heart and the gut. Never give up the story, just shrink it down a bit. So if you only have a minute, take your problem story and shorten it down to about 20-30 seconds. And then your simple solution statement, something interesting about the business, a big achievement of yours, or something about the market that they don't know. And there's your minute. You can make it even shorter for what I call the handshake pitch, a 20-second pitch. 1 line about the problem, 1 line about the solution, and a little tidbit. You can even do one-liners if you have what I call an eye blink moment, that you have to catch them in the blink of an eye. You can have your vision statement. You can have your simple solution statement. You can have a value statement, something that shows them very fast why they should listen to the rest of your pitch and keep riding the elevator with you. Your slides need to look as good as your product. In an era of Instagram, it's as much about how it looks as how it tastes. Personally, I think it has to taste as good as it looks, but we do eat with our eyes first. There's no excuse anymore for having shoddy looking slides. You've got lots of great tools out there, AI and otherwise, that will help you do it in an affordable way. Okay, so you need to be able to generate it. You can use SlideBean, SlideBot, Pitch.com, Pitch.io, or even in PowerPoint, there's the little designer now with the AI button just to make it look better. And when it comes to text, a lot of people are like, well, I got to put it in 10 slides. And then those 10 slides end up looking like DMV eye charts. Don't do that. My rule of thumb, 1 big idea per slide. You might have more slides with less on them. That's fine. And you can have a different set of slides that are sent out. I always, after we do the long deck, we create a teaser deck, a send out deck that might have some more text on it. But the big problem is you don't want people to commit suicide because you've got too much on their text. It is overwhelming and it's a lot. And people do it all the time. Why? Because they're afraid they'll forget something or they won't get it. So they just pile it on. Now, our brain takes in information in 3 channels: our visual, auditory, kinesthetic. When we read, you'd think that it's using the visual part of the brain, right? No, the visual part is the camera. This is our processing center, our data and language processing center, the auditory place. And we all have English software, and there's probably at least another 8 or 10 languages here in this room alone. But if we see a language that we don't read, it's not going to go to that language processing center. It'll stay in the visual. Now, why is that important? Because if they're trying to read, guess what they're not doing? They're not listening to you. Isn't that a shame? Don't compete with your own words. 1 big idea per slide. And I'll piggyback on that. It's 1 big idea that grandma could understand, or grandpa. Excuse me, this is not a gender thing. It's the same as Einstein said, if you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it well enough. And of course, there's a story that goes with it, why it's the grandma story. Many, many years ago, I was training hardware engineers. What is that coincidence at Intel? And I'm sure you all will know right away what this slide says, but I was young in my career. I had no clue what it says. And the guy was there who was like presenting on, well, the multi-1 gig LAN backbone of the backplane of the CSIX net processor and the switch fabric is interplay, like droning on about every data point here. And I was totally losing him. And I was looking around the room at the other hardware engineers in the room to see if they were super excited. They did not look particularly excited by it. So I let him go on for a few minutes. And then I said, okay, thank you. That was nice. Now, can you tell me what that means? And he looked at me kind of like this, well, duh, like, well, what it means is The multi-1 gig backbone, like going extremely painfully slow as if I was a problem child. And I still wasn't getting it. And I said, okay, stop for a second. Could you explain it to me so that my grandmother would understand? And he looked at me with this renewed excitement and enthusiasm. He's like, you mean your grandmother's an engineer? Really? I almost started crying when I told him that neither of my grandmothers, God rest their souls, were engineers. Neither was I or my parents. But we did a little bit of peeling away of the onion, and I finally got what he was trying to say. And all he was trying to say was, Grandma, we're doing a lot more with a lot less space. You know, Grandma, once upon a time, computers were so big and clunky that they took up entire rooms. And today, your phone is like a bazillion times smaller and a bazillion times faster than those clunky old computers. Isn't that cool? And that's what we do. We make that happen. Kind of like your kitchen, Grandma. You know, you cook for 20 people in your teeny tiny kitchen. Okay, so what did we do here? We didn't dumb it down because Grandma isn't dumb. Grandma comes from another world, and we need to be able to explain to her in human speak what it means. And all of you have the onus to explain to your investors, to your customers, things that to you might be obvious and to the rest of the world is not so obvious. Because the bottom line is it's all about them. It's not about your technology and how smart you are. It's about them feeling smart, elevating them, and then wanting to work with you and buy from you. And people want to work with and invest in people that make them feel smart too. Nobody wants to feel dumb. And investors are pretty smart people. They're not always technologists. And sometimes they need to understand what it means, not what it says. Okay? Few more things. Y'all, have you built your crystal balls yet? Voler actually offers a service for, no, I'm just kidding. But luckily you don't need a crystal ball when it comes to knowing their questions in advance, because people are not particularly creative. They will ask the same questions again and again. You've probably been asked the same questions again and again. So I want you to make a list of all the questions you've ever been asked, all the questions you think you might be asked, and all the questions you dread being asked. And I want you to put it like on a Excel spreadsheet, and you start answering those questions. And those that you don't know how to answer, ask your co-founder to answer, and get versed in answering those questions. That way, when they ask you a question, you're not going, Now, you may not have the answer and they ask you a question. It's okay to say, you know what, I don't have all the data. Can I get back to you on that? But you don't want to answer every question like that. Now, in my book, I gathered a whole chapter, like over 100 questions that investors ask. Questions about the team, questions about your funding round, questions about your market, all kinds of things. And this can really help you find those questions and answer them in advance. But I want you to be as prepared for the Q&A. And by the way, I'm not talking like a formal Q&A at the end. If they're interrupting you and asking questions, that's a really good thing. That means they're interested. Okay, so you want to be able to answer those questions as they go. If they've leapt forward totally into something you're going to show, say, excellent question. I'm coming up to that. Give me 1 second. And it's okay, but you don't want to quash their questions if they're asking you really good, interesting, pointed questions. Anybody here ever feel nervous before a big presentation? Oh, John's like, yeah, count me in. Now, other than John and a few of you that raised your hand, you either A, did not hear the question, B, have not given a big enough presentation, or C, are a bunch of liars. No, I'm just kidding. No, because it's the most natural thing in the world to feel nervous before a presentation. I get it too. I usually feel nervous when it's people that I know rather than people that I don't know, because it means more. Some people feel the opposite. If they know people, it's like, oh, home. Now, I usually ask people, where in their body do they feel those nerves? And I get answers like butterflies in my stomach, heart beating fast, shortness of breath, dry mouth. I call this the pipe of terror, everything from your mouth to your belly. Now, put that aside for a second and think of the last time you were really excited about something. An important meeting, an important trip, my workshop today. Where in your body did you feel that excitement? Butterflies in my stomach, a heart beating fast, shortness of breath. Yeah, same. In fact, if we were to hook you up to one of the machines that measured your vital signs, they would measure the same. Where's the distinction? It's the branding we give it. It's the difference between, okay, what's going on? I'm feeling butterflies in my stomach. Oh, I'm about to give an important presentation in front of like 100 investors. Oh my God, I'm so nervous. And those butterflies are sneaky little devils, and they will grow fangs and turn black and these wings, and they'll fly up here and you go, I have no oxygen. I can't breathe. What's going on? I can't remember anything. As opposed to, okay, what's going on? I'm feeling butterflies in my stomach. Oh, yes, I'm about to give a speech, a presentation in front of 100 investors. This is exciting. Oh, and those butterflies, they love a good party. They will throw on their Burning Man clothes and pop a few shots of tequila and put on some Tiesto and they will dance and fly, and they will take you with them, because those butterflies can be your best friends if you let them. Let that excitement come through. Call it excitement, not nerves. Breathe it out. Let it show. Let that come out, because then fear becomes face everything and recover. I've been doing this for nearly 20, oh, actually, no, the workshops for nearly 25 years. And I have yet to see someone die of fright. There's always a first time, but it's honestly, you're probably going to do a lot better than you think. So I want you to think of the last time you gave a great presentation where people were coming up and asking you questions and they engaged, and you just felt all this energy and you were floating. I want you to take that feeling and kind of encapsulate it into a little capsule or a little flask. And every time before you go in to a meeting, you want to pop that little capsule of excitement and elation, or take a little swig of your imaginary. I'm not encouraging drinking here, but hey, if whatever gets you through a presentation. When I work with Europeans, they're like, of course I will have a glass of wine before I get up and present. What are you talking about? But it's not even that. It's knowing that you're going to do really great. And the final point of the day is walk in the room or the Zoom room at your best. They don't know that you got 2 hours of sleep last night because you had a bug in your system. They don't know that you just had an argument with your co-founder and you're feeling crappy. They don't know that you were stuck in traffic and almost didn't make it because the 101 is backed up. All they know is you are the person that has just walked in the room. And I'm going to let you in on another little secret. They really want to like you. They want to like you. They want to like your product. They want to like your team. They want this deal way more than you do. So bring yourself at your best before you go in, because there is no second chance for a first impression. I'm sure some of you out there have interviewed people for positions, and would it be safe to say that in the first 30 seconds you knew if this person had a chance of moving on or not? The rest of it's going through the motions. Same. You don't have that grace period. Come in at your best, because we know. And I want to end with a quote. Quotes are also very powerful storytelling modes. Stuart Butterfield, the CEO of Slack, said, if there's one piece of advice I could go back and tell my younger self, it's concentrate on the storytelling, on convincing people, because if you can't do that, it doesn't matter how good the product is. We all know that Silicon Valley has graveyards filled with great products that never got off the shelf. So before we flip to the other side, I want to thank you all for being here. I want to thank Miguel, and I want to thank Walt for all these years of wonderful. I met Walt back in when he had his little office in Sunnyvale, and I lived down the road, and it's just been wonderful to be in touch. This is how you stay in touch with me. This is the book, audio, paperback, and ebook. So you're welcome that. And in a minute, those of you brave enough to stick around, we're going to flip the tables and let you do some elevator pitches, and you're going to get some on-the-spot Donna GPT coaching. So thank you for being here.
Donna, thank you very much. Now I know why people I've referred to you have given me good feedback.
Oh, I'm so glad. I'm so glad. That means a lot to hear. Questions or volunteers to give the elevator pitch. This is your opportunity. People pay me a lot of money to give this bit of feedback that you're about to get, thanks to Voler, who had me here today. Who was it that asked the question before about it that I said he could be first? Armin? Armin, are you still here?
Yes, I am.
Oh, so would you like to give your elevator pitch and get some coaching from me?
Oh, absolutely. It would be
All
wonderful.
right,
Thank
great.
you.
So maybe this will make you all want to give it a try. So Armin's going to do it. You can attempt to do the story with like, the bit about the problem, bit about the solution, and then something about the business. I'm going to take notes in the chat. Don't look at them until afterwards, okay? And then
Of
anybody that's
course.
on the itch, we've got 15 whole minutes to do this. Let's see how many we can do.
Sure. I try to be very quick
My
with it, and
LLM
it's,
is firing up now and the algorithms are going to work. Yes.
of course. So, my name is Armin Gafuria. I'm the founder of Doorface Panels. At Doorface Panels, we make doors with interchangeable faces. If you walk through any door in any space, you just pause for a moment and look around. It's the most underutilized surface in any building, in any space. And we crave for more technology and smart devices, and our material have to follow, and they haven't. The designs are not looking that enticing as well. So what we do at Doorface Panels is that we have patented energized doors with embedded IoT devices inside the panels. You can add technology to your door. You can have smart locks, sensors, cameras, LED lights, smart glasses inside your door, and you can actually have them all customizable. They're easily repairable. And this is a huge market we're looking at. Entrance door market in North America alone is worth $15 billion. And the demand for smart devices is only on the rise. The smart locks and camera market is hitting the $6 billion market cap really soon in 2 to 3 years. So we have built prototypes, developed basically prototypes with a couple of universities. And we're basically trying to raise funds to build the first VIP, and then get in touch with manufacturers and Voler systems for the electronic parts for sure. And I'm just wrapping it up by...
Great. Thank you very much, Armin, for going first. I love that you made us think about the doors, because I was imagining doors that I've seen. And I want you to take that one step forward. So I would even start with something like, we are looking for ways to transform our homes and make them smarter. We've got smartphones, we've got smart refrigerators, we've got smart coffee pots. But there's one feature that every single home has, and it's probably the most underutilized feature ever, and it's the door. I mean, the door, you walk through the door, maybe ring the doorbell, maybe you have a smart bell, but there's so much more that can actually be done with the door. And the smart home market, it was the smart home or the smart door market, was $15 billion and climbing. And yet we haven't even begun to scratch the surface, and that's where we come in. We create doors with smart components that are interchangeable, customizable, enhancing security, enhancing identification, enhancing safety, enhancing whatever, and say those big things. So just elevate the story a bit more to show how have we not thought about this door thing? It's great. Terrific.
Sure.
Good
Great,
job.
thank you. Yeah.
Amen. Okay, who's next for a little pitch makeover? Avivit, hi.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. So my name is Avivit Ochana. I'm from Israel. So it's night for me here.
Yes, it's late.
Yeah, it's very late. I'm the founder and CEO of Eli. It's an organization that connects between entrepreneurs from all over the world to the Israeli business ecosystem. And how do we do it? So in less than 10 weeks, through online sessions, 10 online sessions with investors, entrepreneurs, and industry key figures, they expand their valuable global network, they develop their skills, and they create new opportunities that it really takes their career to the next level. So that's what we do.
Great. All right. Thank you for that. So you told us about the solution. What I
Yeah.
want to know is, where is the gap that you felt? And I'm not just talking about now, are you looking for investors to invest in the program? Are you looking for members to be part of the program? Are you looking to show how your program should be something that like a Voler needs to work with and partner with? What's your main aim of giving this message?
So right now, I mostly talk to potential members to be part of the program and to organizations to be partners and spread awards with their members.
So let's think about, since you're pitching and most of us are here in the US and people own businesses, what is missing for them? Why should they partner with Ellie and be part of that process? What's missing in their lives that you know you can provide?
Yeah, so it actually started from a personal story.
Of course, there's a personal story there. What's the personal story?
Yeah.
Yes.
On January 23, I quit from a startup that I worked for, and I was pretty lost. So I flew to the US to look for business opportunities and to see what can I do. And I went through a lot of places. And when I was in San Diego and I talked to people there, they invited me to give a lecture in the San Diego State University about my journey. And I actually said I'd love to, but what should I talk about? I was 5 years officer in the Israeli Air Force, and I had a short entrepreneurial journey. So I talked about that. And when I finished my lecture, so they looked at me, you know, when I give lectures in Israel, or when I gave it in the US, I felt different reaction. And I felt like there is a lot of value that they're not really used to. And what I mean when I really try to process it with myself, I think that it's about maybe the entrepreneurial spirit here in Israel, if it's the army that we have to do, or the fact that we call the startup nation. So that's the values that I wanted to bring.
And you
to
are
people.
connecting them to people that will collaborate with them, that will come in and give them parts of the innovation. What's going to happen with that program? To be potential business partners?
Yeah, so most of the people that participate, they are business leaders. They can be at early stage or already have startups or businesses, and they're also getting exposure to very well-known investors and experts. So they get both sides of the networking.
Right. Okay, so here's how I would pitch it if I were talking to a business owner here. So right now, coming from Israel, conversations are always interesting because there's a lot of going on and a lot of different opinions, but let's put that aside for a second. Israel is called Startup Nation, and there's a reason. We've all had to become entrepreneurs from a very young age, and there's a sort of entrepreneurial spirit that happens and a way of creating and developing products that look at things from a new perspective. And that is what we can bring to your organization with our organization, matching you with a startup that could be a potential business partner to help them bounce ideas around with you, go on ideation sprints, testing, bring the speed and the dexterity. And what you have is the marketing and the entrance to the market. And we see that as a perfect marriage of innovation with established businesses being able to shake things up for sort of antiquated areas and bring a new spirit and a new life to it.
Okay, sounds great.
Always
Thank
look
you.
at what they're looking for, and then on the flip side, what the companies themselves, the value they could get out of it.
Okay, thank you very much.
My pleasure. Anyone else? We've got time for like probably two more. Munib, are you have your hand up, or is that from before?
So
I'm gonna give it a go.
here's my pitch. Can you hear me?
Yes. Go for it. Yes.
Excellent. Okay. So what we have is an AI-enabled, revolutionary, nanostructured, multispectral imaging in a grain of sand sensor. Filter-free, extremely compact, high efficiency, Okay, it will give you higher quality conventional imaging, like in your cell phone camera. It'll also give you 3D. It can be used for, security, for digital security, food and drugs safety. It could be used for medical, like endoscopy, because you can look at tissue with all these different bands, and environmental, and many others that I haven't even thought about. Okay,
So this is
We-
this is a camera. I think I missed that. It's a camera the size of a grain of rice.
semiconductor chip that you can put in a camera if you like, okay, in many other formats, but you can certainly put it in a cell phone camera, okay? And instead of the usual 3 colors RGB, you can do 9, including
Now
UV,
you're starting to interest me.
including UV and near IR. And
Who
in
are
the
you
future,
pitching to? Are you
actually,
pitching to investors? Or are you pitching to like OEMs or potential partners or
I'm pitching to investors because this is a brand new startup.
what's
Okay, I'm
missing
putting
in the
my
world
foot in
today?
the door.
Notice, Munib, that you dove right into what you have, and it's almost sounded like, QVC or something that you're selling this most amazing thing, but I didn't get why this is needed. Where's the gap? Where's the opportunity? What is missing in the world today that you are bringing as your brand new amazing grain of rice technology?
It cannot be done this way today. There's nobody. By the way, if you have 9 bands of vision, everything you look at in the world, you will get more information from it, especially through using AI. Everything. Remember the days before X-rays.
So today, the best technology, it's only 3 bands, is what you're
Yes.
saying?
That's
Okay.
the widely deployed
So
technology.
that's where you want to start off. Now, to you, this is super obvious. To those of us not in the hardware world, it's not. And that's where you want to start. Today, even the most advanced cameras, even the most advanced surveillance systems, even the most advanced, what have you, in that only operate with 3 bands of color. What that basically does is it takes the world in and it shows us an image of it. But what's missing by not having more bands, which would be make it much bigger and not something you could hold in your hand, is the attention to detail. Detail that could save lives, details that could save money, details that could bring new opportunities of growth to everything from agriculture to security to schools and beyond. And we are bringing a whole new realm of color to the world on something the size of a grain of rice. It's never been done before, but we have managed to pack a punch of 9 bands. And here's how it works. And then you go into how it works. But you have to engage them with the story first before you talk about how great it is, because they're like, okay, okay, great, but I don't get why. You see the difference?
Yes.
Thank you. Lee. One more. You know you want to do it. You'll kick yourself later for nothing.
I'd be glad to do it.
All right. Oh, okay. I have 2. Yes. Who said that? I heard 2
I'm Carlos.
Hi, Carlos.
And
Okay. Let it go because I think we have one more person that wants to go as well.
right. Let me. Okay. I'm Carlos Lamarga. I'm the CEO and founder of Oparis. And Oparis's job is to save hospitals $41 billion a year by eliminating worthless medication activities that waste 20% of a nurse's time. So over the past 25 years, the number of nurses overall has not increased per capita, but the amount of work that they do that doesn't make any sense has just doubled and tripled and kept going on and on. And along with that is this nasty thing called diversion. Diversion is the theft of opioids by hospital staff, including nurses, on the hospital floor. And that can't go on because it endangers patients' lives and it also creates addicts out of nurses. So we combine software, electronics, advanced chemistry to eliminate time-wasting medication steps. And no one else has put this into one package the way we have. And there's lots of great competitors out there over the past 20-something years that have created deficient, inoperable products. And so I'm going to stop right there.
Great. So this is a dispensing mechanism for specific medication in hospital settings, to the dosing It's a robot, it's a machine. What is it exactly?
Well, that's the next slide that I didn't get to, the next part.
Well, just give me it
But
very.
the answer is, we've created what we call the 3-minute medication administration system per medication. I mean,
Okay,
so,
great.
so
So it's
instead
like
of dispensing at central stations, we've moved it into the patient's room.
Okay, great. So here's where I would change that, because going for the nursing shortage is one way to do it. And I think most of us know that there is a massive shortage of medical staffing. But I would take it one step further and say, when it comes to dispensing medication in hospitals, this is life or death. A, because of the doses. B, because of the toxicity of some of the medications that have to be dispensed. And C, it's the human factor and the human error. And we do have a shortage of skilled staff doing it. So what we've done to alleviate this 80 billion, whatever dollar problem of the correct dosing and the shortage is to create the 3-step doser and then you can kind of take us through the steps where it doses, it delivers, and it monitors adherence for, I'm making that part up, but to ensure it, and gives the feedback loop to the treatment team to make sure people are actually taking their medications. So sometimes we have a story that's almost there, but if you take it one step further, you're like, oh wow, I didn't realize, because I was working with a company that has created like it's a digital nurse where like it dispenses cancer medication straight onto their tongue, because of the toxicity levels, because there's a lot more at-home care for the new strains of chemo today that are oral. Great job, Carlos. Thank you so much. We are at time. Unfortunately, I could do this all day. This is lots of fun. But if you do need me, please reach out, mention Voler, and there's always special partner discounts for you. 2 hours to a deck. It's doable. It's alchemy. Thank you all so much for being here, for sticking around, for spending your afternoon with us. Thanks again to Miguel and to Walt for having me, and may your stories always stick.